Melo, good morning. Thanks for joining us once again. We did get cut off shortly there, but I want to pick up the conversation about some of the narratives and the Afrophobic rhetoric that some are concerned might be reflected in this draft bill. How does this foster, relations for the continent at large? I'm looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the World Trade Organization that's also been shortlisted to be led by an African female for that matter. So looking at issues as well as protectionism that might come through, how do all of these weigh up in the rhetoric that this bill perhaps could be reflecting?
I mean, absolutely, Liesl. Just to summarize before we cut off, we dealt with the constitutional issues, and there I argued that there isn't so much of a constitutional issue. We dealt with the economic issues, and they are said that the bill is very much limited in its vision. So now to address your question in terms of the socio-political impact and I suppose the international relations implications. One of the major drivers, obviously, of being part of the World Trade Organization, and as I alluded to, we had that Nigerian minister, Okonjo Iweala, who is now vying to be the World Trade Organization's head. Obviously, one of the big issues that they monitor there is in terms of tariffs between countries. And I think the bill in itself, obviously does not impact in terms of South Africa's international standing on the tariffs and what tariffs that goods get charged as they're coming into the issue. So what we're dealing more with, as you correctly pointed out, is issues of perception in terms of South Africa's ability to be able to absorb and engage with different nations. I think there, for me, there's a number of issues to deal with, right? The first issue isn't the fact that South Africa has a lot of foreign nationals living within the country. If you're going to ban foreign nationals from doing business, what you're going to end up doing is that you're going to create a humanitarian crisis within the country to the extent that a lot of foreigners are not going to be able to, suppose, have a meeting subsistence of the daily living requirements, right? So that's the first issue that you're going to have. The second issue, obviously, is in terms of the perception on the African continent, whether South Africa now is starting to withdraw in terms of engagement from the rest of the African continent. And I don't think necessarily, I think perhaps that fear might be a little bit overplayed, because if you look at it in terms of the African continent, there are other countries that do run such protectionist measures. A good example of it is Ethiopia, where the African Union is headquartered, right? In Ethiopia, you cannot open a business unless you have a Ethiopian national as an equity partner in your business of a certain percentage. So such rules are implemented in other countries on the continent, right? So I do not think that is unprecedented. But obviously the issue that you're dealing with here is perception, and perception, especially within the context of South Africa having been labeled as having xenophobic violence to that extent, right? So I think that is going to play a major issue. It's something that on the political end, I think they have to manage and massage, right? But I think in terms of the local impact, obviously, it's the humanitarian issues that you have to deal with, and I think the Gauteng government might actually be underestimating the impact that's going to have on a lot of the foreign nationals that are living within South Africa. And I think in as much as they may want to reserve certain business spaces for South Africans, at the end of the day, what they're proposing, in fact, is it's not growing the economy per se, but it's replacing one type of business owner, one type of employee with a South African national. And I think the question then becomes then, what happens to all those other people?
Well, Melo, we're going to have to leave that conversation there. It's an absolute pleasure having you here on Weekend Dawn once again. Thank you very much for chatting to us about that Gauteng Township Economic Development Draft Bill that, of course, has been opened for public comment and will be closed on the 30th of October this month. In fact, just looking at that draft Gauteng bill, which proposes to ban foreigners from owning businesses in townships.